Okay, so I'm doing a tier list and we're just gonna go through every unit from left to right. There's 22 of them in 5 tiers, meaning that about 5 units for every tier and then 3 left over. Try not to go over 5, otherwise it just doesn't make sense. It's like every unit S tier, even though that makes people happy. So we'll just rename them. Cool. Start off with the Atlas. It's basically a siege tank. Once it has the upgrade, it's a lot better. But right now, it costs a little bit too much at around 250 for what it does. It works pretty well with the medvac ship, though. I'd say because it's good against bunched up Evos and in the hands of a good player, it'll basically one-shot gaunts. It does about 100 damage with the upgrade, the fired upgrade. It's okay, but it's a little bit high tier, and you don't see it that much. It works really well with the medvac. I think that's mostly because people just aren't properly microing, because you can kind of just set up an Atlas even without a medvac, and then shield it when your opponent comes up with magmadons, and you back off and micro with your Evo, Lancer army. This way, this unit is still dealing damage. It has 1000 HP shield, and your opponent has to micro to not hit it. I think it's a good unit. I'd probably put it in A tier because I do think there are better units that see more play. SCVs, we're just not going to look at. They don't matter, so I guess there's only 20 units. Next up, the Brute. So Brutes, they beat Lancers, and with the upgrade, they spawn 3 instead of 2 Fiends. They're pretty necessary for Infernal to scout, to take creep camps and tank. Pretty tanky with 30 armor, 20 armor, 30 damage. Or the 10 armor, 30 damage, 190 HP. They're really strong, but they only have 1 attack range, and they kind of fall off because you can kite them with upgraded Evos, Exos. Doombringer. Yeah, so I think this is probably be C tier. Probably C tier. But they only cost 150, so hard to say. Maybe I'll put them in C for now. Doombringers, they're really good. They drop instantly, so you can load them with about 8 gaunts or 2 magmadons. I saw 2 magmadons a lot day 2, but I think it's honestly better just to load them with either fiends or gaunts because they do a little bit better. And unlike the human medvacs, they drop instantly. So I feel like this is better than the medvac. It works with large groups of small units, whereas with the medvac, you kind of have to drop 8 exos one at a time, and it takes too long. I'll probably put this at A and this at C tier. The other difference is that the medvac has an ability that puts a mine in the air. It's cooldown based. I think it's like 30-second or a minute cooldown, and it just blows up, hits some flyers for 50 damage, and slows them. I think this is good. It's useful with Atlas Micro because the Atlases can be sieged when you pick them up and drop them off. But that's about it. Next up, we have the Exo. Exo is a really good unit. Costs about 150 resources total. 25 is therium. Once you've gotten the upgrade, I'd say they're really good because they are able to kite back and kill brutes, kill magmadons if you're microing properly. Like just hit them once, run away for 2 seconds, wait out the stomps that people seem to waste, and then you can basically out micro higher cost units like Infernal, um, these idiots, whatever they're called, can't remember, Reavers, Brutes, and then the only real threat are the Gaunts, but no one's gonna go mass Gaunts, and if they do, it's vulnerable to other things like just running up with Lancers. Okay, so probably a S tier, you're gonna see them every game. Next up we have the Flay Dragon. This unit you can only get from the top-down call top call down. It's basically like a um, battle cruiser. I think they're a little bit too expensive for what they do, but they always look pretty cool. Like if you're not aware, the top call down costs 500 therium and 500 luminite. The yeah, so like 1,000 resources for the most expensive call down. I feel is a bit too much. I don't even remember how much it costs exactly. I think it's like 350. You're just not going to see this very often. And then even if you make them, like 1,000 resources doesn't really beat 7 evos with some support. I would put this at like C, maybe F tier, but the main reason people like them is because they can be sort of tanky, they infest a bunch of units, I think it also poisons them, and they can kind of just come out of nowhere and start harassing bases. They can snipe high tier units like Atlases. I don't believe they have an AoE attack, so yeah, I don't think they belong higher than B. Probably B tier, maybe C. Another issue is that they use a lot of cooldowns, so you're better off just using. Um, yeah, it's just you're better off making more imps. Fiends, you don't really make them a lot. They're fast. They spawn from here, and they spawn from infested units from these guys. They're basically necessary for you to scout. You can kind of keep one at enemy bases, put them in their own hotkey group, unhotkey them from like the number 2 group, or if you're doing your own hotkeys like a pro player, then you can keep them out of your main all army hotkey. Yeah, they're not bad. I think they're necessary, so I put them in B tier, but they're not overpowered or anything. They're low HP, low damage, but in numbers they end up like Zerglings without upgrades, except speed. So yeah, no adrenal gland. Gaunts are really good. They only cost like 65 resources, and against lots of enemies or like 3 enemies, you get the bounce, so they deal good damage. They have the poison, and they infest. Um, Decent attack air, just like the EXO. I wouldn't put them EXO tier just because they don't get that. Well, I guess a lot of the issue is that people don't use sconce properly. I've never seen them use their rush ability, which grants 30% movement speed. So maybe they're a little bit higher, but yeah. I'd say they're a good unit. Hedgehogs are F tier. For some reason, we never see them. One issue is that if you're trying to counter like flyers, which I think is a main use case other than hit and run tactics, then you have to siege them up. And during that siege up time, you're going to take damage, or their flyers are just going to run away if they have more of them. Yeah, for that reason, I would say F tier. They don't really work with other units either because of their ammo uh, mechanic, where they do damage in high bursts and then they have to run away. So if you're fighting and you need a unit that runs away and it's not helping the other units, this idiot, he's like the main uh, range damage dealer for Infernal. So again, they're necessary, but they cost like about as much as a tank, and they do nowhere near the damage. Sieged up, a little bit more mobile, but still not very fast. And oftentimes I just see them die to exos. But yeah, for the cost, they're not too bad. I would say they're probably underutilized. You just need a lot of therium, and the main an issue with Infernal is that they don't get the therium deposit building that Vanguard has, so it's a little bit hard to mass these up. Yeah, probably underutilized. I don't know where to put them. Probably like this above Brute because Brutes will kind of just serve as a tank later on, whereas these can actually help you deal damage against the exo spam. You might not have enough space for just mass gaunts to help do damage, and against mass gaunts, you'll just get kited by Lancer exo if you just make gaunt brute. I, yeah, yeah. Next up is a hornet. I think this is an S tier unit. Straight up 1 versus 1. They will beat an exo in a fight. Um, they cost 150, 75. They're very fast. They can fly back to repair, so there's good micro potential. And they have really good anti-air capabilities. Like they crush Spriggans. I would say they're more used in the Vanguard mirror, less in the mm, non-mirror matchup because of these little flyer dudes that blow them up in mass numbers. But even then, you can make a handful and spread them out so they don't die to the exploders, and then you only have to out micro some gaunts. These guys can end games. They beat all of the Terran mech units. They beat Lancers because a lot of units in this game can't shoot up. Basically, there's just gaunts, exos, other flyers that shoot up, considering that the Hedgehog doesn't really exist. Lancer. Yeah, Lancers are also an insane unit. I might put them before the EXO when you're early game and you can't have massed enough EXOs yet because you need a few frontline units before you just make the backline unit that needs a tier 2 before or needs a lot of time before they're like good. Lancers without biokinetics are probably better than EXOs. And once you've gotten the adaptive plating, they're able to kite, they're able to run past brutes once they've gotten their attack speed buff from the gaunts, and then they're able to jump in and snipe all the gaunts, and then after that, uh, brutes don't deal enough damage to lancers, and lancers don't deal enough damage to brutes. So if you have any exos remaining alive, they'll kill all of the brutes for you while these guys tickle each other. They're a really good unit. I can't say they're better than the Gaunt though, so maybe below Gaunt A tier, high A, and the Atlas still I would consider underutilized. Yeah, so I kind of feel like the magmadons are overused in the matchup against Vanguard. They have a stomp, and that stomp stuns, but they cost 400 resources. I think it's like 250 therium. That's not easy to mine, especially since therium is a slower mining resource, and we've already gone over um, how it's harder for Infernal to mine therium, especially on certain maps where it's away from the gold mine. Some maps, your gold is right next to the therium deposit. Some maps, you have to walk quite a bit to get there. I'd probably put them like, I don't know, they're used enough that they're good in A tier, but the issue is that it's often just because people are microing poorly. Um, yeah, so they're still good for now, but it's mostly because people are bad. You can, people are also wasting the stomps by like casting multiple stomps at a time. I think they don't know that it doesn't stack. The damage doesn't stack. But 150 damage in an area is really good, and if you don't split up your lancers, if you don't run away and get caught with your gaunts or exos, then you could just lose them all or at least take a significant amount of damage. I think they'll be useful, especially if you can drop them on the back lines. Well, that's a risky maneuver against exos that could potentially snipe the Doombringer, but yeah, probably A tier. I do not want to move them above these two. Medtech with the tower, S tier. I think people don't build enough forward bunkers, and like the co-op mode, you have a bunker call down. You can use that to heal up all your bio units. So these guys, dogs, and I guess mobs. The healing is basically free resources. If you repair, if you heal up a Lancer from 1 HP to full, you basically gain 100 resources. But she does it in AoE within the bunker at basically the same pace outside the bunker. Uh, yeah, it's insane. And then if you're in a mirror, against another Vanguard player, you can upgrade these guys. You can give them the nanotech upgrade and uh, cast basically irradiate but mechanical against these to win the mirror. Medtechs are underutilized. They only cost like 50 gas, 100 luminite. Yeah, I'd say they belong in S tier. Just all around good unit. You can even use them in bio balls to heal. The third ability isn't too useful. It's just a speed buff because there's not many debuffs in the game right now. It's just invest in science or ravens units. Sentinel, I think. Yeah, good. Dogs. Dogs are insane once they get the upgrade, and I think their upgrade is one of the only ones that costs like 25 gas instead of the usual 100. That's because they wanted to probably enable a dog rush strategy. You can easily kill people who don't wall off right now against dogs, but dogs are larger than lancers in terms of hitbox, and they're not able to get through wall offs. Um, there was also a recent change during the next week where supply depots or habitats were changed to light armor. Dogs kill habitats like almost instantly once they've gotten their plus 16 bonus damage upgrade. Not only that, they're fast, they have scouting potential. You can put them in side bunkers and make the bunkers reveal a higher area around you, and then you can move the dog out. There'll still be a decent vision radius. Yeah, they're a really good unit, and they only cost 50 resources, so you can mass them. If you trade them 1-for-1 with cons, you're trading up. If you trade them 1-for-1 with exos, you're also trading way up. And they often trade much better than that against exos, and they can finish games uh, where you catch a player off guard, maybe you drop them, or yeah. I've never seen dog drops. I guess it's just these things still unload too slowly. Vessel. So right away, the vessel has a 25% passive speed boost for all nearby ground units. That puts an S tier. I'd say like even high S tier. They are necessary for every army. They don't cost enough. If you micro them well, they won't die. The first ability is like a very slow moving EMP orb that when it detonates and slows movement speed of units hit by 25%, and also reduces their damage by 40% for 10 seconds. 10 seconds doesn't sound like a lot, but it can be basically the entire duration of a short fight. Um, yeah, it's the same duration as the bubble that Vanguard can put on a unit. You can also put the bubble on the flyers, high value flyers to protect them from these bomber units. Okay, speaking of the bombing unit, this thing is basically the only thing keeping Infernal players alive against flyers. If Vanguard had these, it wouldn't just be Hornet mirrors and high level Vanguard v Vanguard. But for now, it is Hornets are too good against basically everything. Like there's a lot of players that don't know how to defend a base with just a bunker, a depot, and an exo inside it. So right now, Hornets are just going to get a lot of wins. If I were to bump a unit down from A tier, I think the Atlas is still underutilized. It's really good with drops because you can kind of just siege a base behind some trees, and then players can't get to the Atlas, and it'll kill all of the buildings. It has damage bonuses of buildings. It also helps with the adaptive plating on Vanguard. Uh, what's this called again? Lancers. So it triggers their movement speed, attack speed bonus, lets them jump into the front line when you walk over the fire. And they don't take much damage from it for some reason. I think it might have something to do with the uh, damage reduction that Lancers have, but I'm not entirely sure because I thought that only stopped damage from big hits. Yeah, I want to put the magmadon higher just because they're used in every matchup. Sometimes you'll see like 6 of them and then no Bruce in the Infernal versus Infernal mirror, but I can't really justify it against these other units. Yeah, I think they're overused. Spriggans. Spriggans are also kind of bad, just because they don't beat Hornets in the air, they don't deal enough damage against units on the ground. Yeah, you don't see them a lot. I think maybe it's just they're nice to use against. They're kind of like mutas, right? Like you can mass them once you've gotten the tech building and you've saved up enough resources. But at the same time, maybe you don't have time to save resources to bank them until you get 3, and then you make like 3 Spriggans from 2 flying buildings all at once, and it gives you the flexibility to decide if you want to commit to mass air. Um, but yeah, I just don't see them being that good because right now they lose to Hornets, and I feel like they don't do enough damage to Gaunts and Exos. They're probably more balanced than the Hornet. So maybe B tier, but yeah, because they're B tier and everything else is kind of broken. At least these two are kind of broken, and this guy's kind of broken. You're not gonna see them that much. Reaper. It has a tongue ability, it pulls in units, so maybe you could pull in a high value unit, deal 75 damage, which is not insignificant. 75 is almost enough to kill a Gaunt, for instance. But they cost a lot, they're slow, and they only deal damage against tanky targets, because they deal damage equal to 10% of the target's max life. They don't shoot up, they basically die for free against Exos. I'm gonna put them in F tier. Yeah. Okay, so next up is a Vulcan. Vulcan has a ability that allows it to jump forward, and I think that means it doesn't really belong in C tier or F tier. The main issue I find with it is that it can get stunned by magmadon stomps, and it can't shoot up. The main reasons I don't think it's as good. Um, Not being able to shoot up means that even if it out damages the Exo, it's not able to out damage it against like flyers. And in those games, you're just gonna have like a ranged unit that that can't do anything. It also doesn't kite very well. It's mostly just there to stand and shoot because it doesn't have a long cooldown between attacks. If it gets stomped, it loses a lot of its damage output, and Magmadons can just push through to get to it. I'm gonna put it in C tier, probably over these two. Should also mention that the jump pack allows it to go over cliffs and break trees, which is kind of good. Just like workers, these 3 units are able to break trees, and that allows you to clear paths to get to the resource camps in Secluded Grove or to get into enemy bases. It's okay. It's a good therium sink. Um, Once you have enough like luminite, some bases just have therium, and you're not going to be able to use them all by making M&M, basically Lancer, Exo with a handful of medtechs and some uh, Sentinels. So you might as well use it on like Atlas and Vulcans, and you don't need a lot of Atlases. So yeah, you still might see them. Bobs are insane. You have overcharge. You have 5 different configurations for it. You can set them up inside a tower and put them by the hangar bay so that every time your Hornet comes back, they get repaired to full, and then you can control them again. Uh, yeah, they're really good. The main thing to realize right now is that you need to use overcharge, and then have your bobs start working on the building or move them off a building that you're trying to build, and then retask them onto the building to get the bonus bob overcharge. The bonus armor allows them to fight a lot of the early tier units and not die because they're tankier due to the armor. They're able to out repair damage from, say, lancers or brutes. And yeah, players aren't very good at waiting out the Bob overcharge and coming back 30 seconds later. I still can't really put them in any tier because all the workers are S tier. And then the imps are pretty good too. Like they are a lot worse than Bob's early game, but once you've maxed out on all the bases that you want, like you're not trying to expand, you can just keep making imps and get the upgrade that turns them into banelings. Put them on the front lines. They deal 100 damage whenever they jump onto the unit in the front line. Yeah, so 100 damage is a lot. You can get them out much more cheaply using the top bar ability that resets the charges too. And they only cost like 15 more, what's it called, therium to turn into banelings. They gain a movement speed buff. They're really good. Very underutilized. Say, I wouldn't use them in drops most of the time, just because like you can kill a bunch of workers, but you can probably also do it with gaunts and then keep the threat up, destroying buildings if your opponent doesn't react to it. But I would use them against army because you can, well, killing armies and killing bases is important. Yeah, so really good unit, underutilized. And I think that's it. That's my take on the different units in the game. Um, I know people are probably going to disagree, especially with the magmadon placement, but I do honestly believe that magmadons are overrated and some of the units up here are underrated. Like these flyers, they basically prevent uh, Vanguard players from going mass hornet. Yeah. If you like this video, I feel like there's a YouTuber that I could recommend. Uh, yeah, Intensity. Yeah, I really enjoy his Stormgate content. Sometimes he does StarCraft 2. He's a really fun player, very optimistic. Check him out. I'll link him in the description.